You're nothing without me. Nothing. Ethan Caldwell's fist crashed onto the mahogany table, making the divorce papers jump. He seized the $50,000 check and hurled it at Sarah's face. Take your pathetic little payout and disappear. His voice was venom, his eyes wild with contempt. Sarah sat motionless in her beige cardigan, absorbing every insult like armor. Then she did something that made Ethan's blood freeze. She crossed out Caldwell and signed Sarah Dubois in perfect, elegant script, the name that would destroy him. Before we reveal how this one signature annihilated everything, Ethan built smash that subscribe button and comment your city below. Trust me, you won't believe where this goes. Ethan leaned back in the leather chair, arms crossed over his custom-tailored suit, grinning like a man who'd just won the lottery. In his mind he had freedom, finally. No more pretending to care about book clubs or Sunday brunches. No more playing the devoted husband to a woman who wore cardigans from outlet malls and made meatloaf on Tuesdays. He was done, and God, it felt good. Sarah sat across from him in that beige cardigan. He despised her hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked exactly like what he thought she was. Small, boring, forgettable. A placeholder wife from a chapter of his life he was ready to burn. Ethan's lawyer Marcus shuffled papers beside him, clearing his throat. The man looked uncomfortable, but Ethan didn't care. Let him squirm. This was his moment. You know, Sarah? Ethan began, his voice dripping with mockery. I almost feel bad for you. 10 years. 10 years you spent being Mrs. Caldwell, and what do you have to show for it? A mortgage I paid, a car I bought, clothes I funded. He laughed again, shaking his head. You really thought you could just coast on my success forever, didn't you? Sarah didn't respond. She just looked at him with those calm brown eyes, and somehow that made him angrier. Say something, Ethan snapped, leaning forward. Aren't you going to beg? Cry, tell me I'm making a mistake. No, Sarah said quietly. That one word, so simple, so infuriating. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. No, that's it. That's all you've got. He grabbed the check and waved it in front of her face. 50 grand, Sarah. Do you have any idea how generous that is? Most women in your position would be lucky to get half that. But I'm a nice guy. I want you to land on your feet. So take the money, sign the papers, and let's both move on with our lives. Sarah reached for the pen. Ethan's grin widened. Finally. Finally, she was going to do what she was supposed to do. Disappear. Fade into whatever quiet, unremarkable life she'd go back to. Maybe she'd get a job at a library. Maybe she'd find some other guy to leech off of. He didn't care, as long as she was out of his way. She picked up the pen, and for a moment, Ethan felt a surge of triumph so powerful he wanted to stand up and cheer. This was it, the official end, the moment he became untethered from the dead weight of his past. But then Sarah did something strange. She crossed out her married name. Ethan frowned. What are you doing? Sarah didn't answer. She wrote slowly, carefully, each letter deliberate. When she finished, she set the pen down and slid the papers back across the table. Ethan picked them up, his eyes scanning the signature line, Sarah Dubois. He blinked. Dubois? What the hell is that your maiden name? Yes, Sarah said. Ethan snorted. Okay, sure, whatever makes you feel better. He handed the papers to Marcus, who took them with a tight-lipped nod. Sign your little name, Sarah Dubois, like it matters, like anyone's going to remember you existed. Sarah stood up. She smoothed the front of her cardigan, picked up her purse, and turned toward the door. Wait, Ethan said, suddenly irritated that she wasn't reacting the way he wanted. Aren't you going to take the check? Sarah paused her hand on the doorknob. She looked back at him, and for just a second, Ethan saw something in her eyes. Not sadness, not anger. Something else. Something he couldn't quite name. I don't need it, she said. And then she walked out. Ethan stared at the closed door, his mouth hanging open. Marcus shuffled uncomfortably beside him. She'll be back, Ethan said mostly to himself. She'll realize she's screwed up and she'll come crawling back begging for that check. Give it a week. Marcus said nothing. Ethan pushed back from the table, riding a wave of euphoria. It was done. He was free. Free to live the life he deserved. Free to be with Jessica, the stunning blonde from marketing who actually appreciated ambition, who understood success, who didn't spend Saturday nights reading novels and drinking chamomile tea. He pulled out his phone and texted Jessica, "It's done. Officially single. Dinner tonight." Her reply came instantly. "Finally, I'll wear the red dress." Ethan grinned. This was the beginning of everything. He had no idea it was the beginning of the end. That night, Ethan took Jessica to Maria, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. She looked incredible in that red dress, turning heads as they walked to their table. Ethan ordered champagne, the expensive kind, because why not? He could afford it. His company, Caldwell Technologies, was on the verge of a breakthrough. His AI project was going to revolutionize the industry. Investors were circling. His net worth was climbing. "To freedom," Jessica said, raising her glass. "To freedom," Ethan echoed, clinking his glass against hers. They drank. They laughed. Jessica leaned across the table, her hand finding his, her eyes sparkling with admiration. This was what he deserved. This was what success looked like. His phone buzzed. A text from his CFO, Richard. "We need to talk. Call me when you can." Ethan frowned but pocketed the phone. Whatever it was, it could wait. Tonight was about celebrating. But the next morning, when he walked into his office, Richard was already there, pacing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, setting down his coffee. Richard turned, and Ethan's stomach tightened. The man looked like he hadn't slept. "We have a problem," Richard said. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that could sink us." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Explain." Richard pulled out a tablet and handed it to Ethan. "Our primary lender. They're calling in the loan." Ethan stared at the screen. Why we've never missed a payment?" "I know, but they're exercising a clause in the contract. They have the right to demand full repayment within 30 days if certain conditions are met." "What conditions?" "Change of ownership." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Change of ownership? What are you talking about? Who owns the bank?" Richard swallowed hard. "That's the thing. I've been digging all morning. The bank we've been working with, Hartley Capital, it's owned by a holding company. And that holding company is owned by another holding company. And that one is owned by an investment group. I traced it back as far as I could, and Ethan, it all leads to the same place." "Where?" "The Dubois Group." Ethan froze. The name hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "Dubois," he repeated slowly. Richard nodded. "Ever heard of them?" Ethan's mind was racing. Dubois. Sarah Dubois. No, that was impossible. That was insane. Sarah was a nobody, a housewife, a woman who clipped coupons and shopped at Target. She couldn't be connected to something called the Dubois Group. Could she? "What is the Dubois Group?" Ethan asked, his voice tight. Richard hesitated. "I don't know much. They're private. Very private. But from what I can tell, they're massive. Like bigger than anything you've ever heard of. They own stakes in banks, real estate tech companies, energy pharmaceuticals. If the rumors are true, they're worth trillions." Ethan felt the room tilt. Trillions with a T. And they own our lender. Looks like it. Ethan sat down hard in his chair. His hands were shaking. "This is a coincidence. It has to be." "Maybe," Richard said, but he didn't sound convinced. Ethan grabbed his phone and dialed Sarah's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then voicemail, her voice calm and familiar, asking him to leave a message. He hung up and tried again. Same thing. "Damn it," he muttered. He tried a 3rd time. On the 4th ring, someone picked up, but it wasn't Sarah. "Mr. Caldwell," a man's voice said. Crisp, French accent, cold as winter. "Who the hell is this?" Ethan demanded. "Where's Sarah?" "My name is Henri. I am Mrs. Dubois's personal assistant." Ethan's heart stopped. "Mrs. Dubois?" "Yes, and I'm calling to inform you that Mrs. Dubois will no longer be taking your calls. She has moved on. I suggest you do the same." Wait, Ethan said, panic rising in his chest. "I need to talk to her. It's important." Mrs. Dubois is quite busy, Mr. Caldwell. She has no time for former acquaintances. Former acquaintances, I was her husband. Was, Henri said, emphasizing the word. Past tense. Good day, Mr. Caldwell. The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone, his pulse hammering in his ears. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. He looked up at Richard. Get me everything you can find on the Dubois group. I don't care what it costs. I need to know who they are and what they want. Richard nodded and left the office. Ethan sat alone, staring out at the city. The same city he'd conquered. The same city that was now starting to feel like a cage. His phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Lunch today, I have news. Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't. His entire world was unraveling, and he didn't even understand why. By the end of the week, Richard had compiled a file. It wasn't much. The Dubois group was like a ghost. No public records, no press releases, no CEO listed anywhere. But there were whispers, stories from people who claimed to have worked for them, accounts of entire companies being bought and dismantled overnight, fortunes made and destroyed with a single phone call. And at the center of it all was a name that kept appearing. Sarah Dubois. Ethan read the file 3 times each pass, making his stomach churn harder. There were photos, old ones, society pages from Paris and Monaco, a young woman in an elegant gown standing beside European dignitaries. The caption read, Sarah Dubois, heiress to the Dubois fortune, attends the annual Geneva summit. It was her, younger, different, but unmistakably her. Ethan felt like he was drowning. How had he not known? How had she hidden this? He thought back to their wedding, small, quiet. She'd insisted on it, said she didn't like big crowds. He'd thought it was charming, modest. Now he realized it was calculated. He thought about their life together, the way she never asked for anything, never complained, never demanded the lifestyle he was building. She didn't need his money. She had her own, more than he could ever dream of, and she'd let him believe he was the one in control. Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Caldwell, a woman's voice said. Professional. Detached. This is Claire Winters from Hartley Capital. I'm calling to schedule a meeting regarding your outstanding loan. I want an extension, Ethan said immediately. I'm afraid that's not possible. Then I want to speak to whoever's in charge, whoever made the decision to call in the loan. There was a pause. Mr. Caldwell, the decision came from the top, and the top doesn't take meetings with borrowers. Who is the toppy? Another pause, longer this time. I'm not at liberty to say. Is it Sarah Dubois? The silence that followed told him everything he needed to know. Good day, Mr. Caldwell, Claire said, and the line went dead. Ethan threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. This was her. This was Sarah. She was doing this. She was destroying him. But why? He racked his brain searching for an answer. Had he been cruel? Yes, but not cruel enough to deserve this. Had he cheated? Technically, no. He'd waited until the divorce was finalized. Had he taken something from her? No. She'd walked away with nothing. So why? The answer came to him slowly, like a cold wind creeping through a cracked window. Because she could. Because he'd underestimated her, mocked her, dismissed her. And now she was showing him exactly what that cost. Ethan tried to focus on his company, on saving what he could, but every day brought new disasters. Investors pulled out. Contracts fell through. His lead engineer quit, headhunted by a competitor. The AI project, his golden ticket, stalled without funding. Jessica started asking questions. What's going on, Ethan? You seem stressed. It's nothing, he lied. Is it about your ex? He looked at her sharply. Why would you say that? Jessica shrugged. I don't know. You've been weird ever since the divorce. Did she try to take you for everything or something? Ethan laughed bitterly. No, she didn't take anything. Then what's the problem? He couldn't explain it. How could he tell Jessica that his ex-wife was a trillionaire heiress who was quietly dismantling his entire life? She'd think he was crazy. Hell, he still wasn't sure he believed it himself. But the evidence kept piling up. Every financial door that slammed in his face led back to the same shadowy network of companies. And at the center of that network was the Dubois Group. One night, Ethan sat alone in his apartment drinking scotch and staring at the divorce papers. He read Sarah's signature over and over. Sarah Dubois. How had he missed it? How had he been so blind? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have been kinder. Ethan's blood turned to ice. He stared at the message, his hands trembling. He typed back. Sarah, no response. He tried calling the number. It didn't even ring. Just a recorded message saying the number was no longer in service. Ethan downed the rest of his scotch and poured another. His empire was crumbling. His future was disappearing. And the woman he'd spent 10 years underestimating was the one holding the knife. He thought about that last look she'd given him in the conference room, that unreadable expression. He'd thought it was defeat. Now he knew it was pity. She'd already won, and he hadn't even known they were playing. The next 3 weeks were a descent into hell. Ethan woke up every morning with his chest tight, his mind racing through spreadsheets and projections that no longer made sense. The numbers that had once promised billions now screamed bankruptcy. He stopped sleeping through the night, started drinking before noon. Jessica noticed, but said nothing, her concerned glances turning into something colder as the days passed. Richard came to his office every morning with worse news. First, it was the lender. Then it was the investors. Then it was the clients. One by one, they all disappeared like smoke. I don't understand, Ethan said, staring at yet another termination notice. We had a signed contract with Meridian Tech, 3 years. How can they just walk away? Richard looked exhausted. They cited the volatility clause, said our financial instability poses too much risk. Financial instability. We were fine a month ago. Were we? Richard asked quietly. Ethan looked at him sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Richard hesitated, then pulled out another folder. I've been going through our books, really going through them, and Ethan, there are some irregularities. What kind of irregularities? The AI project, the one you said you developed yourself. The patents are filed under a shell company. Ethan's blood ran cold. So that's standard practice for intellectual property protection. Except the shell company isn't yours. It's owned by an investment group based in Geneva, and that group is a subsidiary of, don't say it, the Dubois Group. Ethan stood up so fast his chair crashed backward. That's impossible. I built that AI. I wrote the code. I hired the team. Did you? Richard asked. Or did someone fund it? Someone who made sure their name never appeared on any documents you actually saw. Ethan's hands were shaking. He thought back to the early days of Caldwell Technologies. He'd been working out of a garage, barely scraping by when the first real money came in. An anonymous investor, a friend of a friend. Sarah had handled the paperwork. She'd said she wanted to help, wanted to support his dreams. Oh, God. It was her, Ethan whispered. It was her the whole time. Richard said nothing. Ethan grabbed his phone and called Sarah's number again. It went straight to a message that the number had been disconnected. He tried the old house. Disconnected. He tried her sister. The call was answered on the second ring. Hello? Linda, it's Ethan. I need to talk to Sarah. There was a long pause. Sarah doesn't want to talk to you. Please, I just need 5 minutes. I need to understand what's happening. What's happening? Linda's voice turned sharp. What's happening is that you spent 10 years treating my sister like she was nothing, like she was lucky to have you. And now you're surprised that she's done being treated that way. I didn't know? You didn't know because you never asked. You never wondered why she never needed your money, why she never asked for anything. You just assumed she was simple, boring, beneath you. Linda, please. She loved you, Ethan, really loved you. And you threw it away for what, a younger woman, a bigger ego. I hope it was worth it. The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone, his heart hammering. Loved. Past tense. His office door burst open. Jessica stood there, her face flushed with anger. We need to talk, she said. Not now, Jessica. Yes, now. She slammed the door behind her. What the hell is going on? I just got a call from my mother. She said she saw an article about Caldwell Technologies facing bankruptcy. Is that true? It's complicated. Complicated. Jessica's voice rose. Ethan, I left my job to be with you. You said you were going to be the next Elon Musk. You said we were going to have everything. And we will. I just need to figure some things out. Jessica crossed her arms. Is this about your ex-wife? Ethan's jaw tightened. What? You've been obsessed with her since the divorce, constantly checking your phone, making weird calls. What did she threaten you or something? You wouldn't understand. Try me. Ethan looked at Jessica, really looked at her. She was beautiful, ambitious, everything he thought he wanted. But standing there in his crumbling office, he realized he didn't know her at all, didn't trust her, didn't love her. Sarah is not who I thought she was, he said carefully. What does that mean? It means she's powerful, more powerful than I ever imagined, and I think she's the one destroying my company. Jessica stared at him. Then she started laughing. Are you serious right now? Your boring ex-wife in the beige cardigans is some kind of corporate mastermind. Ethan, listen to yourself. You sound insane. I'm not insane. Then prove it. Show me evidence. Show me something that proves she's doing this to you. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he show her circumstantial connections? A name that kept appearing in holding companies. It all sounded crazy when he said it out loud. Jessica's expression softened. Baby, I think you're having a breakdown. The stress of the company, the divorce, it's all too much. Why don't you take a few days off, see a therapist? Get some help. I don't need help. I need to fix this. How by chasing conspiracy theories about your ex-wife? Jessica shook her head. I can't do this. I can't be with someone who's falling apart. Jessica. I'm sorry, Ethan. Call me when you get your head straight. She walked out. Ethan sat down in his chair alone in his office, staring at the walls. Everything was falling apart. Everything. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Hello, Mr. Caldwell. It was Henri again. That same cold, polite voice. I'm calling to inform you of a development you may find interesting. What do you want? It's not about what I want. It's about what Mrs. Dubois wants. And right now, she wants you to know that your company's assets are being liquidated. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? The patents, the intellectual property, the technology you believed you created. It's all being transferred to its rightful owner. That's theft. That's corporate espionage. I'll sue. Henri's laugh was soft and devastating. You'll do nothing, Mr. Caldwell, because you have no legal standing. The patents were never yours. The technology was funded by the Dubois Group from day one. You were simply the face, the puppet. That's a lie. Is it check your original incorporation documents? The ones your wife helped you file. Read the fine print. You'll find that every major asset of Caldwell Technologies was actually licensed to you, not owned by you, licensed, and now that license is being revoked. Ethan's hands went numb. Why is she doing this? Because she can, because you hurt her, and because, Mr. Caldwell, you need to learn that actions have consequences. I want to talk to her. Let me talk to her. Mrs. Dubois is currently in Geneva. She has no interest in speaking with you. Geneva? What's she doing in Geneva? Living her life, the life she put on hold for 10 years while she played housewife for an ungrateful man. Good day, Mr. Caldwell. The line went dead. Ethan sat there, his mind blank with shock. Then he opened his laptop and started searching. Incorporation documents. He found them buried in an old email folder. Files Sarah had sent him years ago with a note that said, "Just sign where I marked. Trust me." He'd signed without reading. He opened the documents, now his eyes scanning the dense legal language. And there it was, buried on page 47. A clause that stated all intellectual property developed under Caldwell Technologies was licensed from a subsidiary of DG Holdings Geneva. DG Holdings. Dubois Group Holdings. Ethan felt like he was going to be sick. She'd owned him from the beginning. Every success, every breakthrough, every moment he'd felt like a genius, like a titan of industry. He'd been dancing on strings she controlled. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You never asked about my family. Not once in 10 years. Another text came through, a photo, Sarah standing beside an older man in an impeccable suit. They were at some kind of gala surrounded by people Ethan vaguely recognized from magazine covers. European politicians, business magnates, old money. The caption read, "My father, Philippe Dubois. He sends his regards." Ethan zoomed in on the man's face. Sharp eyes, a slight smile. The look of someone who'd crushed better men than Ethan before breakfast. Another text. "He wanted to meet you once. I told him you weren't ready. I was right." Ethan threw his phone across the room. The next morning, Ethan arrived at his office to find the locks changed. A security guard he didn't recognize stood at the entrance. "I'm sorry, sir," the guard said. "This building is no longer accessible to you." "What, I own this company?" "Not according to the documents I have." The guard handed him an envelope. "You've been served." Ethan ripped open the envelope. Inside was a notice of asset seizure. Caldwell Technologies had been dissolved. All assets transferred to DG Holdings for breach of licensing agreement. "This is illegal," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "You can't just take my company." "Take it up with your lawyer, sir. I'm just doing my job." Ethan stumbled backward, the papers falling from his hands. People were staring. His employees, former employees, watching through the glass doors as their boss was escorted off the property. He called Richard. No answer. He called his lawyer. Voicemail. He called every board member, every investor. No one picked up. He was alone. Ethan went home to his apartment. The doorman gave him a strange look but said nothing. He rode the elevator up, his mind numb. When he opened his apartment door, he found Jessica packing. "What are you doing?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "I'm leaving." "Jessica, please. I need you right now." "No, you need a miracle, and I'm not in the miracle business." She zipped up her suitcase. "My mother was right. You're a bad investment." "That's all I am to you, an investment." Jessica finally looked at him. "What did you think this was, Ethan love, you left your wife for me? Because I was younger and prettier and made you feel important. I was with you because you were rich and successful and going places. But you're not rich anymore. You're not successful. And you're definitely not going anywhere." She walked past him. "I loved you," Ethan said desperately. Jessica paused at the door. "No, you didn't. You loved what I represented, just like you never loved Sarah. You loved what she did for you. The problem is you never figured out what she actually was until it was too late." She looked at him with something almost like pity. "Goodbye, Ethan." The door closed. Ethan stood in the empty apartment surrounded by expensive furniture he could no longer afford, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and realized he had nothing. His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "The Winter Solstice Gala is in 2 weeks. You should come. It would be educational." Ethan stared at the message. The Winter Solstice Gala. He'd heard of it. The most exclusive event in New York. Billionaires, royalty, people who actually mattered. He'd never been invited before. He typed back, "Why would you invite me?" The response came immediately. "Because I want you to see what you walked away from, and because I'm not cruel enough to let you wonder forever." Ethan's hands were shaking. This was it. His chance to see Sarah again, to talk to her, to maybe somehow fix this. Another text. "Don't bring a date. Don't bring hope. Just bring yourself and an open mind." The next 2 weeks were a blur of panic and desperation. Ethan tried everything. He called every contact he'd ever made, begged for meetings, offered to work for free. No one returned his calls. He went to banks for loans, denied. He tried to access his savings, frozen pending legal review. Everything Sarah touched turned to ash in his hands. The night of the gala, Ethan put on his best suit. It was wrinkled. He hadn't been able to afford dry cleaning. His shoes needed polish. His watch had been sold to pay rent. But he went anyway because what else did he have? The gala was held at the Frick Collection. Ethan arrived by subway. He, who'd once had a driver on call 24/7. At the entrance, a woman in an elegant black dress checked the guest list. "Name?" she asked without looking up. "Ethan Caldwell." She scanned the list. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, yes, you're on here." She looked at him, taking in his wrinkled suit and desperate eyes. "Enjoy your evening, Mr. Caldwell." Ethan walked inside. The space was breathtaking. Chandeliers dripped crystal light onto marble floors. Women in gowns that cost more than cars. Men in tuxedos tailored by master craftsmen. Ethan recognized faces from Forbes covers, from news broadcasts, from history books. And then he saw her. Sarah stood across the room wearing a dress that looked like liquid silver. Her hair was different, elegant, professional. She was talking to a man who looked vaguely familiar, laughing at something he said. She looked happy. Ethan started walking toward her, pushing through the crowd. People gave him strange looks. He didn't care. He had to talk to her, had to explain, had to. A hand caught his arm. Henri appeared beside him like a ghost. "Mr. Caldwell," Henri said quietly, "you're making a scene. I need to talk to her. She doesn't wish to speak with you. I don't care what she wishes. I need answers." Henri's grip tightened. "Lower your voice. Let go of me." "Mr. Caldwell, if you cause a disruption, you will be removed. Is that what you want? To be thrown out in front of all these people?" Ethan looked around. People were staring now, whispering. He saw phones coming out, cameras turning his direction. "Please," Ethan said, hating how his voice cracked. "Just 5 minutes." Henri studied him for a long moment. Then he leaned in close. "You want to know why she's doing this? Look around. These people, this world, this is where she belongs. You were a detour, an experiment in normalcy, and you failed. I loved her. You loved the idea of her, the quiet wife who made you feel important, but you never loved Sarah, the real Sarah, because you never bothered to find out who she actually was." Henri released his arm. "There's an exit through the garden. I suggest you use it." Ethan stood there, frozen. Across the room, Sarah glanced his direction. Their eyes met. For just a second, Ethan saw something flicker in her expression. Recognition. Memory. Then she turned away, and Ethan understood. He was nothing to her now, not her husband, not her enemy, just a stranger she used to know. He walked toward the garden exit, his legs moving on autopilot. Behind him, the gala continued. Laughter, music, the sound of people who mattered living their lives. Ethan stepped outside into the cold December air and realized he was crying. Ethan sat on a bench in the frozen garden, his breath coming out in white clouds, his expensive suit doing nothing against the December cold. Inside the gala continued without him. He could hear the muffled sound of an orchestra laughter floating through the walls like ghosts of a life he'd never actually had. His phone buzzed. A notification from his bank. Insufficient funds. His credit card had been declined trying to pay for the subway ride home. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was bitter and broken. Another buzz. An email this time. From his landlord. Notice of eviction. 30 days. Ethan deleted it without reading past the subject line. What was the point? He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. Hundreds of names. Business associates. College friends. People he'd partied with, made deals with, celebrated with. He started calling. The first 3 went to voicemail. The 4th picked up. Ethan. It was Marcus, his former lawyer. I can't talk to you. Mark, I need help. I've been instructed not to have contact with you. I'm sorry. Instructed by who? Silence. By Sarah, Ethan said. It wasn't a question. I have to go. Marcus hung up. Ethan tried 5 more calls. Same result. Either they didn't answer or they found an excuse to get off the phone within seconds. It was like he'd been erased from existence. He was about to give up when his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered immediately. Hello? Mr. Caldwell. Not Henri this time. A woman's voice. American. Professional. My name is Catherine Mills. I'm calling from the offices of Philippe Dubois. Ethan's heart stopped. Sarah's father. Yes, Mr. Dubois would like to meet with you. When? Now, if you're available, a car is waiting outside the garden gate. Ethan looked up. Sure enough, a black Mercedes sat at the curb engine, running exhaust curling into the night air. Why does he want to see me? Ethan asked. That's between you and Mr. Dubois. Will you accept the meeting? Ethan thought about saying no. Thought about walking away, finding whatever dignity he had left. But dignity didn't pay rent. Didn't answer questions. Didn't give him back what he'd lost. I'll be right there, he said. The car ride took 20 minutes. The driver didn't speak. Classical music played softly through the speakers. Ethan watched Manhattan slide past the windows, all those buildings full of people living their lives completely unaware that his was ending. They pulled up to a building Ethan recognized, the Pierre Hotel, one of the most expensive addresses in the city. "Mr. Dubois is in the penthouse suite," Catherine said, appearing beside the car like she'd materialized from thin air. She was tall, elegant, probably in her 50s, the kind of woman who managed billionaires' lives without breaking a sweat. "Follow me." They took a private elevator. Catherine used a key card. The elevator rose smoothly quickly. Ethan's ears popped. The doors opened directly into the suite. Ethan had been in luxury before. He thought he understood wealth, but this was different. This wasn't new money trying to impress. This was old money that didn't need to prove anything. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. The art on the walls probably cost more than Ethan's entire company had been worth. "Mr. Caldwell," a voice said. Philippe Dubois stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the city lights. He was exactly as he'd appeared in the photo. Late 60s, maybe early 70s, silver hair, impeccable posture, the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. He turned and Ethan saw Sarah in his eyes, the same calm intelligence, the same ability to see right through you. "Sit," Philippe said. Not an invitation, a command. Ethan sat. Philippe walked to a bar cart and poured 2 glasses of cognac. He handed one to Ethan, then settled into the chair opposite him. "Do you know what this is?" Philippe asked, gesturing to the glass. "Cognac. Louis XIII. This bottle is worth approximately $40,000. The cognac inside is a blend of eau de vie aged up to 100 years. Philippe took a sip. "I tell you this not to impress you, but to illustrate a point. Some things take time, patience, an understanding of value that extends beyond immediate gratification." Ethan said nothing. "My daughter spent 10 years with you," Philippe continued. 10 years playing a role. "Do you know why?" "No." "Because she loved you?" Philippe said it simply, like stating a fact. "She met you at a coffee shop. You were nobody, working on some app that would never go anywhere. You bought her a $5 latte and told her about your dreams, and she found it charming." Ethan's throat tightened. "I told her it wouldn't work," Philippe said. "I told her that men like you, men with ambition but no substance, would eventually resent her, would feel diminished by what she was, but she insisted. She wanted to know what it felt like to be normal, to be loved for herself, not for her name." "I didn't know who she was." "Exactly." Philippe leaned forward. "That was the point. She wanted someone who would love Sarah, not the Dubois heiress. And for a while I think she believed you did." "I did love her." Philippe's expression didn't change. "You loved the version of her you invented, the quiet wife who supported your dreams, who made your life easier, who never challenged you or demanded anything. That's not love, Mr. Caldwell. That's convenience." Ethan felt something crack inside his chest. Then why did she stay? "If I was so terrible, why stay for 10 years? Because she kept hoping you'd see her, really see her. She kept thinking that one day you'd ask about her family, her past, her dreams, that you'd be curious about the woman you married." Philippe's voice was quiet, devastating. "But you never did. You were too busy building your empire on her money to notice you were married to a queen." The cognac glass shook in Ethan's hand. "The company, the AI, that was all her from the beginning. The initial investment came through one of our shells. The technology was developed by our research division. The patents were filed through our legal team. You were given the framework, the resources, and the credit. All Sarah asked in return was that you treat her with basic respect and kindness. I did. You mocked her in front of your colleagues, called her simple, boring, a housewife who didn't understand business." Philippe's voice cut like a scalpel. "She heard you, Mr. Caldwell. At your Christmas party last year, you were drunk showing off for your employees. You told them your wife was so dull, she made beige look exciting. You laughed, they laughed. Sarah was in the next room. Sarah." Ethan's vision blurred. He remembered that night. Remembered trying to be funny, trying to impress. He thought Sarah hadn't heard. "She came home and cried," Philippe said. "Called me at 3 a.m, asked me if she was boring, if she'd wasted her life trying to be someone she wasn't. I told her to leave you. She said she'd give it 1 more year, see if things changed. They could have changed if she'd just told me who she was. Why should she have to? Philippe's voice sharpened. Why should a woman have to prove her worth by revealing her wealth? Should love be conditional on net worth? Ethan had no answer. And then you met Jessica, Philippe continued. Young, ambitious, exactly the kind of woman who would stroke your ego. Sarah knew within a week. She has excellent investigators. She could have exposed you immediately, destroyed you, but she waited, gave you the chance to be honest, to choose her. I didn't cheat, Ethan said desperately. Not until after the divorce. Physically, perhaps not, but emotionally, you left her long before you filed those papers. Philippe finished his cognac. Sarah asked me to let her handle this herself, no interference. She wanted to see what you would do when she stopped playing the role you'd assigned her, when she stopped being small to make you feel big. So this is all punishment revenge. No, Mr. Caldwell. This is education. You needed to learn that actions have consequences, that people are not props in your story, that the quiet woman in the beige cardigan might be the most powerful person in any room. Ethan's hands were shaking. What happens now? Philippe stood. Now you rebuild, or you don't. That's entirely up to you. I have nothing. No money, no company, no home. How am I supposed to rebuild from nothing? The same way most people do. You work, you struggle, you learn humility. Philippe walked to a desk and pulled out an envelope. Sarah wanted me to give you this. Ethan took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single key and a note. The note read, There's a cottage in the Swiss Alps. Small, simple. Yours if you want it. No strings. Consider it a severance package for 10 years of your life, or consider it proof that I'm not the monster you think I am. Either way, we're done. Be well, Ethan. Try to be better. She's giving me a house. Ethan stared at the key. A cottage, Philippe corrected, worth approximately $300,000, enough to live modestly if you're careful. It's in a village called Grindlewald. Beautiful. Quiet, far from everything you think matters. Why would she do this? Because despite everything, she doesn't want you to suffer. She wants you to learn. There's a difference. Philippe walked to the door, signaling the meeting was over. The cottage comes with one condition. What condition? That you never contact her again. No calls, no emails, no attempts to explain or apologize. You take the gift and you let her go. Ethan looked at the key in his hand. His last connection to Sarah, his last chance to fix things. And if I don't take it, he asked, then you leave here with nothing and you figure out your life on your own. But the offer expires tonight. Accept it now or lose it forever. Ethan's mind raced. A cottage in Switzerland, a chance to start over, but it meant giving up, meant accepting that he'd lost her completely. Can I at least see her one more time, just to say goodbye? Philippe's expression was carved from stone. She doesn't want to see you. That's the point, Mr. Caldwell. You don't get a dramatic goodbye. You don't get closure on your terms. You get what she's willing to give you, or you get nothing at all. Ethan stood there, the key, feeling like lead in his palm. I need to think about it, he said. You have until midnight. Philippe checked his watch. That gives you 43 minutes. Catherine appeared as if summoned. I'll show you to a room where you can consider your options. Ethan followed her to a smaller sitting room. She left him there, closing the door with a soft click. Ethan sat on an antique sofa staring at the key. Outside, New York glittered with a million lights, a million dreams, a million people who had no idea that his world had imploded. His phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. I heard you crashed the gala. Are you okay? He almost laughed. Now she cared. Now that he was at rock bottom, she wanted to check in. He typed back, I'm fine. The response was immediate. We should talk. I was too harsh earlier. Ethan deleted the message without responding. He knew what that meant. Jessica had heard about the cottage, heard about the severance package. She was circling back, hoping there was still something to salvage. Another text, this one from an unknown number, time's up in 30 minutes. Choose wisely. Ethan looked at the key again, thought about what accepting it meant. He'd be admitting defeat, admitting that he'd lost everything that mattered. But wasn't that the truth anyway? He thought about Sarah, really thought about her for maybe the first time in years, tried to remember when he'd stopped seeing her, when she'd become background noise in his own story. There'd been a night maybe 3 years ago. She'd asked him about his day, and he'd spent an hour talking about a difficult client. Then she'd started to tell him about a book she was reading, and he'd cut her off. Said he was too tired. Picked up his phone and scrolled through emails while she sat beside him in silence. He remembered now, the way her face had closed off, the way she'd said goodnight and gone to bed early. He'd thought she was being sensitive, dramatic. He hadn't realized he was breaking her heart. There'd been other moments, hundreds of them, thousands. Every time he'd dismissed her opinion, every time he'd made plans without asking her input, every time he'd introduced her as just my wife, like she was an accessory instead of a person. The door opened. Catherine stood there. "It's 11:57, Mr. Caldwell." Ethan looked at the key one last time. "I'll take it," he said. Catherine nodded. "There's a car waiting downstairs. It will take you to JFK. Your flight to Zurich leaves at 6 a.m. A driver will meet you at the airport and take you to Grindlewald." "That fast? Sarah believed you'd accept. She knows you better than you think." Catherine held out a folder. "Your new passport, new phone, new identity if you want it, or keep your name, your choice." Ethan opened the folder. Inside was a passport with his photo but a different name. Daniel Foster. A phone already activated. A credit card with a $10,000 limit. Instructions for accessing a bank account in Switzerland with enough to live on for a year. "She really thought of everything," Ethan whispered. "She always does." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, Mr. Caldwell, she cried when she made these arrangements. She may be done with you, but it still hurts her. Remember that." Ethan left the Pierre at 12:15 in the morning. The car took him through empty streets to JFK. He didn't sleep on the flight, just stared out the window at the darkness, thinking about everything he'd lost and everything he'd never actually had. When he landed in Zurich, a driver was waiting with a sign that read, "Foster." The drive to Grindlewald took 2 hours. Mountains rose around them, snow-capped and eternal. The village was tiny, postcard perfect, the kind of place where nothing happened, and that was the point. The cottage sat at the edge of the village overlooking a valley. It was small, like Philippe had said. 2 bedrooms, a fireplace, a kitchen with old appliances, but it was clean and warm and waiting for him. Ethan walked inside and found a note on the kitchen table. "You have a year to figure out who you are without the empire, without the money, without the performance. If you leave before then, the cottage reverts to the Dubois group. If you stay, it's yours. Use this time wisely, or don't. That's up to you now." There was no signature. Ethan sat at the kitchen table and finally let himself cry. Really cry. Not the bitter tears in the garden, not the angry tears in his apartment. These were different. These were grief. He'd lost Sarah, not because she'd been cruel, not because she'd wanted revenge, but because he'd failed to see her, failed to value her, failed to be the man she'd hoped he could be. And now he was here in a cottage in the Swiss Alps with nothing but time and silence and the crushing weight of his own failures. Outside, snow began to fall. The first week in Grindlewald, Ethan didn't leave the cottage. He barely ate. Mostly he sat by the window watching the snow fall, wondering how his life had come to this. The silence was suffocating. No emails, no meetings, no phone calls. Just him and the howling emptiness of his thoughts. On day 8, he ran out of food. The village store was a 10-minute walk down a winding path. Ethan pulled on the winter coat he'd found in the cottage closet and stepped outside. The cold hit him like a slap. He'd forgotten what real winter felt like, insulated, as he'd been by heated cars and office buildings. The store was small family run. An older woman behind the counter looked up when he entered. "Guten Morgen," she said. Ethan stared at her blankly. She switched to English, her accent thick but warm. "Good morning. You are the new resident of the Muller cottage, yes?" "Yes, how did you know?" "This is Grindlewald. Everyone knows everything." She smiled. "I am Heidi. You need help finding something." Ethan grabbed bread, cheese, eggs, coffee. Basic things. Things he'd never had to shop for himself before. Sarah had always handled the groceries, or they'd ordered in or eaten out. He couldn't remember the last time he'd actually cooked a meal. At the register, Heidi rang him up and gave him a total in Swiss francs that meant nothing to him. He handed her the credit card Catherine had given him. "We don't take cards here," Heidi said. "Cash only." "I don't have cash." "The bank is down the street. They have ATM." She started bagging his groceries anyway. "You pay me tomorrow, yes, I trust you." Ethan felt something crack inside him. This stranger trusted him more than anyone in his old life had. "Thank you," he managed. "Bitte. Welcome to our village." Ethan found the ATM, withdrew cash, came back and paid Heidi. She waved him off like it was nothing. Walking back to the cottage, Ethan passed a small cafe. Through the window, he saw people laughing, talking, living normal lives. He thought about going in, but the idea of small talk with strangers made him feel sick. So he went home and ate cheese and bread alone. That night, his new phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, expecting Philippe or Catherine or Henri. "Hello." "Hello." "Mr. Caldwell." A different voice. Younger, male, American. "My name is David Chen. I'm a reporter with the Wall Street Journal." Ethan's stomach dropped. "How did you get this number?" "I have my sources. I'm working on a story about the collapse of Caldwell Technologies. I'd love to get your side." "I have nothing to say." "Really?" "Because the story I'm hearing is pretty wild. Genius entrepreneur discovers his ex-wife is actually a trillionaire heiress who bankrolled his entire career, then destroyed him after he divorced her for a younger woman. That's Shakespearean." "It's not that simple." "Then help me understand. Give me an interview. Tell your story." Ethan almost laughed. My story is that I was an arrogant idiot who didn't appreciate what he had until it was gone. You want to print that?" There was a pause. "Actually, yes. That's exactly the kind of honesty that makes good journalism. People love a redemption arc." "There's no redemption here, just consequences." "Mr. Caldwell." Ethan hung up, but the call rattled him. If one reporter had found him, others would follow. His isolation wasn't going to last. Sure enough, over the next 3 days, he got 7 more calls. Journalists, bloggers, someone claiming to be from a podcast about corporate scandals. He stopped answering the phone. On day 15, he woke up to pounding on his door. Ethan opened it to find a man in his 30s, camera hanging around his neck, grinning like they were old friends. "Ethan Caldwell, Jake Morrison Tech Insider. Can I get a quote about your fall from grace? Get off my property." "Come on, man, just 5 minutes. How does it feel to lose everything? Do you blame your ex? Do you blame yourself? Are you planning a comeback?" Ethan slammed the door in his face. But Jake didn't leave. Ethan watched through the window as the reporter set up shop on the path, camera ready, waiting for a shot. Ethan called the local police, explained the situation in broken English and hand gestures. 2 officers showed up an hour later and politely but firmly escorted Jake away. "He will come back," one officer said. "These reporters, they are like mosquitoes, very annoying." "What do I do?" The officer shrugged. "Ignore them. Eventually they find new story." But the damage was done. That night, Ethan made the mistake of Googling himself. The headlines were brutal. Tech bro gets destroyed by billionaire ex-wife after cheating scandal. From riches to rags, the Ethan Caldwell story. Karma catches up how one man lost everything by underestimating his wife. There were photos, him getting kicked out of the gala, him looking disheveled outside his former office. Comparisons between Sarah in her beige cardigan and Sarah in designer gowns at European events. The comments were worse. He deserved it. Imagine being dumb enough to cheat on a trillionaire. This is what happens when mediocre men get cocky. Ethan closed his laptop and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and cracked. He spent the next 3 days drunk. On day 19, Heidi showed up at his door with a basket of food. "You have not been to the store," she said, pushing past him into the cottage. "You look terrible. When did you last eat?" "I don't know. Yesterday?" "Yesterday you bought schnapps. That is not food." She started unpacking the basket. Fresh bread, soup, fruit. "Sit. I will make you eat." Ethan sat. Heidi heated the soup, cut the bread, and placed it in front of him like he was a child. He ate because it was easier than arguing. "You are running from something," Heidi said. It wasn't a question. "I'm not running. I'm hiding." "What is the difference?" Ethan had no answer. My husband died 5 years ago, Heidi said, sitting across from him. I thought I would die too. The grief, it was so heavy. I stayed in my house for months, would not see anyone, would not leave. One day my daughter came and dragged me outside, made me walk to the store, made me talk to people. I was so angry with her. Why are you telling me this? Because hiding does not heal. It just delays. She stood up. Tomorrow you come to the cafe, 8 in the morning. We have a group that meets. Old people mostly. We drink coffee and complain about the weather. You would fit in. I'm not old. No. But you are broken. That is close enough. She headed for the door. 8 o'clock. Do not make me drag you. She left before Ethan could refuse. The next morning, he almost didn't go. But at 7:55, he found himself walking toward the cafe, not because he wanted to, but because Heidi scared him more than his own shame. The cafe was warm and smelled like fresh pastries. 6 people sat around a large table near the fireplace, all over 60, all looking at him with open curiosity. This is Ethan, Heidi announced. He is American. He is sad. Be nice. I'm not sad, Ethan protested. You cried into your soup yesterday. You are sad. She pushed him into a chair. Everyone. This is Ethan. Ethan, this is everyone. An old man with a beard that could house birds stuck out his hand. Klaus, I teach at the ski school. You ski? No. You will learn. Mountains are good for healing. A woman with silver hair and kind eyes introduced herself as Margot. I run the bookshop. You read? Not really. You will learn that too. They went around the table. A retired doctor, a former engineer, a woman who made cheese, all of them looking at him like he was a puzzle they wanted to solve. Why are you here? The doctor asked bluntly. In Grindlewald, Americans don't come here to hide unless something very bad happened. It's complicated, Ethan said. Everything is complicated until you say it out loud, Margot said. Then it is just truth. Ethan looked at these strangers, these kind-faced people who had no reason to care about him, and something broke. I destroyed my marriage because I was too arrogant to see my wife for who she really was. She was extraordinary, and I treated her like she was ordinary. When she left, she took everything because everything I had was actually hers. Now I'm here trying to figure out how to live with myself. The table was silent. Then Klaus laughed. Well, that is complicated. But honest, Margot added. Honesty is a good start. They didn't judge him. Didn't offer platitudes, just poured him coffee and started talking about other things. The weather, village gossip, Klaus's granddaughter who was dating an unsuitable boy. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt something other than despair. Not happiness, not peace, but something like the memory of normalcy. He started going to the cafe every morning. On day 32, Klaus dragged him to the ski school. You cannot live in the Alps and not ski. It is disrespectful to the mountains. Ethan was terrible at it, fell constantly. Klaus laughed himself sick watching Ethan wipe out for the 15th time. You think too much, Klaus shouted. Stop thinking, just move. Stop thinking, if only it were that easy. But gradually, slowly, Ethan got better. His body learned what his mind couldn't process. How to shift weight, how to trust the mountain, how to fall and get back up. On day 48, Margot invited him to her bookshop. I need help organizing the new inventory. You look strong. Come lift boxes. Ethan spent the afternoon hauling books, and Margot paid him in coffee and conversation. You were rich before, yes? She asked. Yes. And now you are not. How does it feel? Ethan thought about it. Lighter and heavier at the same time. Good answer. She handed him a book. Read this. It will help. It was Marcus Aurelius. Meditations. Ethan almost laughed. Philosophy. Like that would fix anything. But that night he read it anyway. And something in those ancient words cracked open a space in his chest he didn't know was sealed. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Ethan read that line 5 times. On day 63, Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number, but he answered anyway. Hello. Mr. Caldwell. It's Catherine Mills. His heart jumped. Is Sarah okay? She's fine. I'm calling because there's been a development you should be aware of. What development? Jessica Harper has filed a lawsuit against you. She's claiming you made promises of financial support and lifestyle maintenance that you've failed to honor." Ethan almost laughed. "I'm broke. What does she think she's going to get?" "She's also sold her story to a production company. They're making a docuseries about your relationship. It's called The Trophy Wife Who Wasn't." The laugh died in his throat. "Can they do that?" "It's America. They can do whatever they want. I'm calling as a courtesy to let you know you might start seeing cameras again." "Does Sarah know?" Mrs. Dubois is aware. She finds it distasteful but not surprising. "Is she? How is she?" There was a long pause. "She's moved on, Mr. Caldwell. I suggest you do the same." Catherine hung up. Ethan sat there holding the phone, feeling something he couldn't name. Not jealousy exactly, more like grief for a door that had closed so completely he couldn't even see where it used to be. That night at the cafe, he told the group about Jessica's lawsuit. "Let her sue," Klaus said. "What can she take, your charming personality?" Even Ethan smiled at that. "These people, they are still living in the old story," Margot said. "You are writing a new one. Let them fight over the ashes." On day 90, spring came to Grindlewald. The snow melted. Flowers appeared. The village transformed into something almost magical. Ethan had been there 3 months, and he'd changed without noticing. He was leaner, quieter. His hands were rough from work helping Klaus at the ski school, hauling boxes for Margot, fixing things around the village for people who paid him in meals and conversation. He hadn't checked his email in weeks, hadn't Googled himself, hadn't thought about Caldwell Technologies or board meetings or any of it. One morning he woke up and realized he felt almost okay. Not happy, not whole, but okay. He was making coffee when someone knocked on his door. Not the aggressive pounding of a reporter, just a polite knock. Ethan opened it to find a woman in her 30s, professional but warm, holding a tablet. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm Anna Bergman. I'm an attorney representing the Dubois Group." His stomach dropped. "What now? May I come in?" He let her in, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Anna sat at his small kitchen table and pulled up documents on her tablet. "You've fulfilled the first 3 months of your residency requirement. Mrs. Dubois asked me to check in and assess your status." "My status?" "Whether you're planning to stay or leave. The terms of the agreement state you need to remain here for a full year to retain ownership of the cottage." "I remember the terms." Anna studied him. "You look different, healthier." "I ski now, and I stopped drinking myself to death. Low bar, but I cleared it." She smiled slightly. "Mrs. Dubois will be pleased to hear that." "Will she?" The question came out sharper than he intended. "Does she care at all what happens to me?" Anna's expression softened. "More than you know, but that's not something I'm authorized to discuss." She stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mr. Caldwell, I've worked for the Dubois family for 8 years. I've seen Mrs. Dubois end business relationships, destroy competitors, and dismantle companies that threatened her interests. But I've never seen her set someone up for success the way she set you up here. This cottage, this village, these people. She chose this place specifically because she thought it might save you." Anna left before Ethan could respond. He stood in his kitchen, those words echoing in his mind. She chose this place specifically because she thought it might save you. Not to punish him, to save him. Ethan walked to the window and looked out at the village, at the mountains, at this small, perfect corner of the world that had somehow become home. And for the first time since signing those divorce papers, he understood what Sarah had been trying to teach him, that everything he'd thought mattered didn't. And everything he'd thought was ordinary was extraordinary. 6 months into his year in Grindlewald, Ethan stopped counting days. Time moved differently here, measured not in quarters and deadlines, but in seasons and conversations, and the small victories of living a simple life. He'd gotten a job at Klaus's ski school teaching beginners. The pay was laughable compared to what he used to make, but it covered expenses. More importantly, it gave him purpose. Watching a terrified 8-year-old make it down their first slope without falling felt better than any board meeting ever had. One morning in July, Heidi came to the cafe with news. "There is a woman asking about you," she said, settling into her usual chair. Ethan's stomach tightened. "A reporter?" "No, American." Very elegant. She is staying at the hotel. She asked the concierge about the man in the Mueller cottage. What did you tell him? Nothing. But she will find you. This is small village. Heidi studied him over her coffee cup. You look worried. Is this a bad woman? I don't know who it is. But he had a terrible suspicion. That afternoon, Jessica appeared on his doorstep. She looked exactly the same. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, designer clothes that cost more than his monthly salary. Ethan, she said like they were old friends, you're hard to find. That was the point. Can I come in? Every instinct screamed to say no, but curiosity won. He let her inside. Jessica looked around the small cottage with barely concealed horror. This is where you're living, Ethan. This is tiny. It's enough. It's a closet. She sat on his threadbare couch. I came because I owe you an apology. Ethan almost laughed. You flew to Switzerland to apologize. The lawsuit was a mistake. My lawyer convinced me I had a case, but honestly, I was just angry. Angry that you lied to me about who you were. I didn't lie. I was exactly who I said I was. I just didn't know what I actually had. Jessica waved that away. Semantics. Look, I'm willing to drop the lawsuit if you'll do something for me. There it was. The catch. What do you want? Ethan asked. An interview for the docuseries. Your side of the story. How Sarah destroyed you. How she manipulated everything. The world needs to know what kind of person she really is. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. Get out. Ethan, I said get out. Sarah didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. And I'm not going to help you turn her into a villain to make yourself look better. Jessica's expression hardened. You're still protecting her after everything she did to you. Everything she did. She gave me 10 years. She funded my dreams. She supported me when I had nothing. And I repaid her by treating her like she was invisible. Ethan stood up. You want a villain for your story? Use me. Tell them I was an arrogant fool who threw away the best thing that ever happened to him. That's the truth. Jessica stood, her face flushed with anger. You've lost your mind. Living in this cottage playing ski instructor pretending you're happy. This isn't you. You're right. The man you knew isn't me. That was someone I was pretending to be. This is closer to who I actually am. Pathetic, Jessica spat. You had everything, power, money, status, and you're throwing it away for what, some redemption fantasy? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm learning to live with myself. That's more than I could do before. Jessica grabbed her purse. When this documentary comes out, you're going to look like a joke. I hope your pride is worth it. My pride already cost me everything that mattered. I've got nothing left to lose. She left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Ethan sat down, his hands shaking. That night at the cafe, he told the group what happened. This woman, she wants to make you famous again, Klaus asked. Infamous. There's a difference. Let her talk, Margot said. Words only have power if you give them power. You know the truth. That is enough. But it wasn't that simple. Over the next few weeks, Ethan started seeing the promotional materials for the docuseries. They titled it Billion Dollar Mistake, the Ethan Caldwell Story. The trailer painted him as a narcissistic monster and Sarah as a vengeful ice queen. Neither portrayal was accurate, but accuracy didn't matter in entertainment. People started recognizing him again. A tourist at the ski school asked for a selfie to show their friends they'd met the guy from that documentary. Ethan refused and quit teaching for a week. You cannot hide every time someone recognizes you, Klaus said. That is not healing. That is cowardice. I'm not being a coward. I'm protecting my peace. Your peace or your pride, Klaus challenged. You are ashamed. That is different than being private. The words hit harder than Ethan wanted to admit. On day 240, Ethan received a letter, actual paper mail forwarded through Catherine Mills's office. The return address was Geneva. His hands shook as he opened it. The letter was from Sarah. Ethan. I've been informed that Jessica is using our story for entertainment. I want you to know that I had no part in this and have instructed my legal team to distance the Dubois Group from any involvement. What happened between us is private, and it should stay that way. I'm writing because I think you deserve to know that I'm not angry anymore. I was for a long time, hurt, betrayed. But I've had time to process, and I understand now that you weren't trying to be cruel. You were just being who you'd been taught to be, a man who measured worth in accomplishments and status. You didn't know any other way. I hope Grindlewald has given you space to learn a different way. Not because I want anything from you, but because I genuinely want you to be okay. You're not a monster. You were just lost. We all get lost sometimes. Anna tells me you're doing better, that you've made friends, that you're working and living simply. I'm glad. That's all I ever wanted for you. To find peace without the performance. Your year is almost up. If you choose to stay, the cottage is yours free and clear. If you choose to leave, that's okay too. Either way, I want you to know something I never said when it mattered. You weren't a bad husband because you were evil. You were a bad husband because you were scared. Scared that if you weren't constantly proving yourself, you'd disappear. I understand that fear now. I spent 10 years trying to be small enough to fit into your world. We both lost ourselves. I hope we both find our way back. Be well, Sarah. Ethan read the letter 7 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in the drawer beside his bed. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about everything she'd written. You weren't trying to be cruel. You were just being who you'd been taught to be. Was that true? Or was it an excuse? The next morning, he went to Margot's bookshop. I need help, he said. With what? I want to write a letter, but I don't know if I should send it. Margot made tea and sat him down. What do you want to say? Ethan thought about it. I want to thank her and apologize. Really apologize, not the defensive kind I would have given before. But she asked me not to contact her, and I don't want to violate that boundary just to make myself feel better. Then write the letter and don't send it, Margot said. Sometimes the writing is the point, not the receiving. So Ethan wrote. He spent 3 days on it, crossing out lines, starting over, trying to find words that were honest without being self-pitying. Sarah, thank you for the letter. Thank you for this cottage. Thank you for giving me a chance to become someone worth being. You were right about everything. I was scared, terrified that if I stopped performing, stopped achieving, stopped climbing, I'd have to face the fact that I didn't know who I was underneath all the ambition. You knew who you were. That's why you could be quiet, content, present. I mistook that for simplicity, for lack of ambition. I didn't understand that real strength is knowing yourself so completely that you don't need external validation. I spent 10 years with an extraordinary woman and convinced myself she was ordinary because I needed to believe I was the extraordinary one. I'm sorry. Those words don't fix anything, but they're true. I'm sorry I made you small to make myself big. I'm sorry I never asked about your family, your dreams, your life before me. I'm sorry I took your love for granted and repaid it with contempt. You deserved so much better. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I know that ship has sailed. I'm writing because you deserve to know that your gift worked. Grindlewald saved me, not from poverty or obscurity, but from myself. I'm learning to live without performing, to find value in small things, to measure worth in kindness instead of accomplishments. I teach skiing now. I'm terrible at it. But the kids don't seem to mind. I have friends who like me, even though I have nothing to offer them. I drink coffee every morning with people who couldn't care less about my past. It's not the life I thought I wanted. It's better, because it's real. I hope you're happy, really happy. You deserve everything beautiful this world has to offer. Thank you for loving me when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for leaving when I gave you no choice. And thank you for this second chance at becoming human. I won't waste it. Be well, Ethan. He folded the letter and put it in an envelope. But he didn't address it, didn't mail it, just kept it in his desk drawer as proof that he'd finally learned to say the things that mattered. Day 300 came and went. Ethan stopped thinking about the deadline, stopped worrying about what would happen when the year ended. He was just living. Klaus asked him to become a permanent instructor. Margot offered him part-time work at the bookshop. The retired doctor asked if he'd be interested in helping organize a community health fair. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt useful without feeling important. And that distinction made all the difference. On day 364, Catherine Mills called. Mr. Caldwell, tomorrow is your final day. I need to know your decision. Will you stay or will you leave? Ethan looked around the cottage, at the simple furniture, The books Margot had given him. The photographs Klaus had insisted they take at the ski school. The life he'd built from nothing. "I'll stay," he said. "The cottage is yours then. I'll have the papers drawn up." "Catherine, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How is she, Sarah? Really?" There was a long pause. "She's getting married." The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan sat down hard. "When?" he managed. "Next spring. To a professor from the Sorbonne, literature, very quiet, very kind, the kind of man who asks questions and listens to answers." Ethan felt tears on his face. "Good. That's good. She deserves that." "Mr. Caldwell, are you all right?" "I'm happy for her. I really am. It just hurts knowing I could have been that for her if I'd tried." "That's called growth," Catherine said gently. "A year ago, you would have been angry, jealous. Now you're happy for her. That's significant." After she hung up, Ethan sat in the quiet cottage and let himself grieve. Not for what he'd lost, because he'd never really had it, but for what could have been if he'd been a different man. The next morning day, 365 Ethan woke up to snow. Not the heavy snow of deep winter, but the first gentle snow of a new season. He made coffee and sat by the window watching the village wake up. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "1 year. You made it. I'm proud of you." There was no signature. But Ethan knew. He typed back, "Thank you for saving my life." The response came immediately. "You saved your own life. I just gave you the space to do it." Ethan stared at those words for a long time. Then he deleted the message thread. Not because he wanted to forget, but because he needed to let go. He finished his coffee, bundled up against the cold, and walked to the cafe. His friends were already there, saving him a seat by the fireplace like they did every morning. "There he is," Klaus announced, "the permanent resident." "I heard the news," Margot said, smiling. "Welcome home, Ethan." Home. Not a cottage in Switzerland, not a backup plan or a consolation prize, but home. Ethan sat down, accepted the coffee Heidi poured him, and joined the conversation about nothing important and everything that mattered. He'd spent his whole life chasing significance and found it in the last place he'd ever looked. Not in boardrooms or bank accounts or beautiful women who made him feel important, but in simple mornings with kind people who saw him for exactly who he was and liked him anyway. Sarah had given him a cottage, but what she'd really given him was himself, the person he could have been all along if he'd just stopped performing long enough to be real. And maybe Ethan thought, as Klaus launched into another story about his impossible granddaughter, maybe that was the only kind of redemption that actually meant anything. Not the kind where you got everything back, but the kind where you finally understood why you lost it in the first place. The documentary premiered to mild success and faded quickly from public consciousness. Jessica got her 15 minutes and moved on to her next relationship. The business world forgot Ethan Caldwell existed, and Ethan learned to be grateful for the forgetting. Years later, when tourists asked the locals about the American who taught skiing, they'd say he was a man who'd lost everything and found something better. They didn't know the details, didn't need to. What mattered was that he'd stayed, learned, changed, that he'd taken the gift he'd been given and built something real from it. Not an empire, just a life. Simple, honest, true. And in the end, that turned out to be enough.